Dear Thai, we always invite our teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, that we call Thai. It's an affectionate name in Vietnamese for teacher. So we always invite Thai to come, to be here with us. So dear Thai, dear beloved community, we've been so enjoying our time here in Findhorn. It was on my bucket list for many, many years to come, and thanks to Suzanne, she has made this easy for us to come, and we are so enjoying being here. So first of all, I'd like to ask, who is part of the Findhorn Ecovillage community? Oh, so wonderful. Thank you for coming. I'm going to be talking about community, and I know that community is such a wonderful thing, but sometimes it's such a hard thing too. So thank you for coming to listen to more about community. Sometimes we're a bit, but I'm very happy that you've come. So in Buddhism, many of you know that the Buddha offered 3 jewels to take refuge in. The first refuge is in the Buddha, which is mindfulness. So that means in this practice of noticing and being present for what is there in us and all around us, so that we've really woken up to what's happening, because we know that all of us have a tendency to not really want to see, I'm very good at avoiding. So we all have this tendency of a capacity for not seeing. Oh, I have a bee. Oh, hello. Wonderful. We have a capacity for not wanting to really see what is there. So that's the first refuge, is all of our capacity to notice what's happening. And the second refuge is the Dharma. So that is all the ancestral wisdom going back millennia, even before the Buddha, 2,600 years ago, from all our wonderful teachers, the wisdom that has been passed down to us. And we can continue to learn until the day we die. We always have something to learn. And then the third jewel, and our teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, he put a lot of emphasis on this third jewel. Some Buddhist traditions don't put so much emphasis on it, which is Sangha, that is community. And that's what many of you in this hall, you know a lot about. And living in our community in Plum Village, this is a very important part of our life. The good news is that in the huge amount of research which has been done into well-being and happiness in the last few years, all of those 3 elements figure. I think the 6 main elements, we're going to touch some of them during this sharing, which are essential to our happiness. One of them is to continue to learn throughout our lives. Another one is noticing. If we're not here for those wonderful wonders of life, those elements of joy, then they're not here for us. So that's a very important one. And the third one is community. We all need community. We are social beings. If we are alive today, we've survived, it's because we have evolved to live together in groups. And Thai, because of his own personal history, growing up through war all the time. In the beginning, the Indo-Chinese War? No, we don't say that, do we? What do we call? Well, anyway, the French colonialism. So growing up in Vietnam, colonized by the French, and so guerrilla activity all the time, trying to find their liberation. And then later, the American-Vietnamese War, when it was basically a civil war, when families would be broken, some for the communists, some for the anti-communists, Thai has seen how war and hatred, discrimination can tear families, countries apart. So it's no wonder that his great dream is to build a community. So I wanted to tell you a little bit how I first went to Plum Village. I first went in 1998. I had no idea what I was going to find. I just happened to have picked up a book. I was living in Paris at that time, which was about the 16 exercises of breathing. And I found this was such a wonderful meditation method that I was very interested to go deeper. So I went to Plum Village hoping it wasn't going to be some kind of strange sect. And anyway, it wasn't, thank goodness. But I spent that week, because you always go for a minimum of a week, I spent most of the time in tears when I was awake, and at night having the most violent nightmares. So something in that experience, in coming into a community, was touching something very deep in me. And when I left on the Friday, and the lovely monastic sisters gave me a big hug and said, "Are you coming back?" And with a big smile I said, "Yes." And inside I was saying, "Never, never." But a meditation teacher I had in Paris, when I explained this situation, he said, "Oh, it sounds like just the work for you." Oh, okay. And so, amazingly, I decided to go to Plum Village twice a year, which I did for many, many years before I finally decided to jump in and change my clothing. So, why was that so terrifying? I think it was because I'm a bolter. When things get tough, I'm out. And growing up in England wasn't so easy, and so at the first opportunity, I left home at 17 to go and live in London, and then I left England, get a bit more distance between me and my family, to go to France. And so living and working in France was quite tough. Many of you know who go to travel to different countries and find a new career, find a new place. It's can be a very lonely experience. And I had created a lot of armor to protect myself. And going to Plum Village, wow, it was so challenging, because suddenly bits of the armor start kind of falling to the ground with a clonk. There are cracks that open, and we start touching those vulnerable parts of ourselves. But Thai recommended that it wasn't enough just to come to Plum Village for a week, that we need to join a community. And there are lay communities like the one Susanna has talked about, a little bit everywhere in Europe, and now a little bit all over the world in our tradition. And so I joined this community in Paris, and then later one in the mountains when I went to live in the Alps, and then later in England when I came to live in England. And I found that I could take refuge in this lay community. People like yourselves just coming together, sitting together, meditating together, sharing deeply together. I could really take refuge, and I realized that these people became my go-to people. Even if there were difficulties with my family or work or whatever, the people in my meditation group, they were the ones who I knew would be there for me, and I would be there for them. So when we create a sangha, a community, and we can create a safe space, there's so much relief. And Thai would say that creating community, as many of you have been doing in the past and are continuing to do, this is the noblest work that we can do, to offer a place of refuge and sanctuary and connection to people, many people who are so lost and so much in despair. And so this is such a wonderful work that many of you in this room are doing. But anyway, when I decided, after 14 years of practicing as a layperson, I decided to ordain, I knew that Sangha was going to be the tricky one. I love the practice, I love listening to the teachings, but living 24/7 with these people, sharing a room with these people that I haven't chosen who I'm sharing my room with, that is different. So that is very, very scary. And I knew that this was going to be my biggest challenge, but I also knew it was going to be my biggest opportunity to grow. How many of you agree? Yeah. So painful, but that's how we grow. So in our tradition, we don't recommend that meditators go off and live in a cave all by yourselves. No. Go and share a room with a whole bunch of people from all over the world with all different world views, and everyone thinks their view is right. So this is very scary. And in the Buddhist tradition, we say that living in community, it's a bit like the way that in Asia they clean chopsticks. They don't clean them one by one, but they get a great big bunch of chopsticks and they rub them together. And that's how we get them clean. So that's what we're doing in community. Painful. So something else I've noticed about community life is that isn't it strange? It often attracts a lot of people who are very independent. Who in this room feels they're very independent and went off traveling around the world by themselves? And yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's kind of like we want this, when we're independent, it's often because we've been very wounded in the community of our family when we were younger. And so it's like we want to have another go at trying to heal by coming together in a community. So, I'm just going to drop in something I mentioned in a retreat the other day, but I find it so interesting. I'm a great fan of Bruce Tift. Some of you may know about him. He's a psychotherapist, but also Buddhist practitioner of many, many years. And he recommends, because he works a lot with families, and often in a couple, there is one person who wants to be very independent and the other one who wants to connect. And that's generally how couples, isn't that funny? It's so we can blame the other one for all the things that we don't want to take responsibility for. So his suggestion, if you're a very independent one, and I kind of have taken this to heart because I feel like I've kind of married my community. So my partner is Plum Village Sangha. So my practice for me as the independent one, when I'm feeling, I didn't sign up for this, is to say to myself, I am very needy and I am very dependent. Wow, that's scary, isn't it? That is the last thing we want to admit to, that we are dependent and that we are needy, because we were so hurt when we were children, when we had those needs, when we were dependent. And that's why we had to get out of there and go off and travel around the world and be super independent. So what I've realized, and I've been working with this a lot actually, living in the Plum Village community, is looking at my needs, looking at the fact that I am dependent. It's a complete chimera, it's a complete delusion that we could be independent. We inter-are. There is no such thing as a separate self. Your happiness is my happiness. Your suffering is my suffering. We deeply are connected one to the other. And so, in terms of our historical self, of course we have these wounds, and we can talk about a self in that sense. It's helpful to use that word, that designation, a self. This self with an inner child who was wounded, and I need to practice self-compassion to heal that self. But in the ultimate dimension, we can say that we all are one. But be careful of spiritual bypassing. Oh, we are all one. There is no separate suffering. Be careful. We have to choose when we are talking about the ultimate dimension and the historical dimension. So let's just listen to the sound of the bell. So, as I said earlier, building community is the most noble work that we can do. And it's good to remind ourselves of that when things are getting tough. And I'm sure in your communities that you belong to, and certainly at Plum Village, we have a lot of meetings, and it's so challenging. But Thai, in his great wisdom, in fact, even before Thai, the Buddha, in his great wisdom, he gave us practices to help building community. And today I want to talk to you about a practice the Buddha offered called the Six Harmonies. And these are the principles of togetherness. So maybe I'm going to write some of this up. And before I go any further, I just want to really bow with respect to all of those in this audience who've been part of a community for so many years. I mean, respect to you. Because in Plum Village, we're such a young community. We started in 82, and maybe some of our oldest monastics have been monastics for 25, maybe maximum 30 years. Sometimes we have visits from some of our Christian monastic friends. They have been monastics for 60 years, and we feel very, very humble. So we know that some of you in this room, you've been part of community for double what we have. So respect to you. Okay, the Six Harmonies. And the first one, show up. So if we don't actually show up to the meeting or to the meditation, then we're not contributing to the collective energy. And a community is all about collective energy. And as we heard yesterday, Thai's dream was of transforming the collective energy. So as part of a community, we need to invest in that collective energy. Recently, I was doing a deep listening session by Zoom to a friend of our community who is one of the trustees of Plum Village UK. And she's going through a lot of meetings at the moment, partly for creating the UK practice centre in the Plum Village tradition way, which is already happening. We've bought it, we have it. And good news. But of course, now the Sangha building starts. And she was saying about, it's so difficult, all these meetings, she feels so inadequate and it's so difficult. And I found myself saying to her, Phong, because she's a wonderful Vietnamese, part of our Vietnamese community, all you have to do is show up. Just be there and follow your breathing and show up. It's already enormous. And I remember our abbess for Lower Hamlet, this is the hamlet that I'm part of in Plum Village, when she speaks about coming to our sessions of meditation every morning, she would put it more, she would kind of turn it around and say, what are you offering to the community? What energy are you bringing to the community? So it's not about coming to the meditation and what can I get out of it. It's what am I offering? Just by simply being there and being present. And so it's really well worth in your community groups, when you come together, to be aware of, are we nourishing ourselves enough? If we're only talking about all the problems and the difficulties, who's going to want to come to another meeting? And it's also a bit like when we have our sharing circles, it's so important that they don't become a place where everyone just dumps their dustbin of suffering, because nobody's going to want to come anymore. It's so depressing. And so we really need to see, are we nourishing our joy enough? We start our meeting by nourishing our joy, singing a song, the kind of energy that Sister, I call her Braveheart, Sister Braveheart and Brother Openness created this morning with the wonderful songs. That is the kind of energy that we want to go through this day with, to create the joy before we start looking into our difficulties and our suffering. So another important thing about showing up is when we're sharing. How are we sharing? Are we using mindful speech? We may have very, very good intentions about sharing something that's so important for us, but what about the impact that's having on the others? There is a difference between intention and impact. We can really share from the heart, but in fact, when we've finished, everyone else's energy is just boom, like that. So we have to be very aware of how, what kind of energy we're putting out there. Okay, so maybe we can listen to a sound of the bell. So the next one is sharing material resources. Well, that's something that certainly those of you living in the Findhorn Ecovillage community, you know all about. And that is a real practice. Looking into my capacity to be generous, noticing those stingy parts of ourselves that perhaps come from a place of feeling that getting into that kind of scarcity mindset of there's not enough. And this is a very deep practice of practicing generosity. And this is another one of those elements of happiness that the researchers have found, that when we can be generous and share, as many of you in this room, you know all about this, when we share, we receive even more. And we have a saying in Zen, which is, there is no giver and there is no receiver. Everything is flowing in both directions. Of course, to be able to share our material resources means we need to trust our community, and that is a whole subject. Can I trust? Can I open myself? Do I trust my community? And that is a real practice. And that's where the practice of interbeing is very helpful, knowing that, as I said earlier, the well-being of my community is my well-being. And my difficulty is the difficulty of the community. We really are we inter-are. So to be able to have that sort of fluidity of exchange. And just to say, in Plum Village, as monastics, of course, we really take this to quite a, this is a very important practice for us. And I remember Thai once gave a talk in Vietnam when he was finally allowed to go back to Vietnam after 40 years of exile. And he gave a talk to members of the Vietnamese government, who of course are all the high cadre of the Politburo and all this, it's a hardline communist country still. And when Thai was talking about how monastic live, he said, yes, we don't have our own personal phone, we don't have personal cars, we don't have a bank account. And he said, we are the communists, not you. He dared to say that. So what was I saying? I've already forgotten. Senior moment. What was it? No, what was the one I was saying? Oh, maybe I haven't said it yet. Oh yes, that's why. We're going on to a new subject. Sharing ethical principles. So as Buddhists in even just as Buddhists, we all follow the five, in fact in the old time, originally from the Buddha, they were called the 5 precepts, which were very, very simple. No killing, no stealing, no inappropriate sexual behavior, no lying, no consumption of mind-changing substances. But Thai realized that you have to think, when Thai came to the West in the beginning, it was in the 60s, and he kind of parachuted into all the change that was happening, particularly in America, all the young people, the activists demonstrating against the war. There was such a what can we say, a melting pot of all kinds of ideas, but basically we don't want the ideas from before, we want everything new, we want to change everything. And Thai felt that, the 5 precepts, that's not going to go down well, because particularly many of the activists came from a Christian background and have been brought up with the idea of the commandments and this very dualistic approach of what's right and what's wrong, and you must not do that, you must not do that, and they didn't want anything of that. I mean, maybe there's people in the room who recognize themselves amongst these people. And so Thai, with his great wisdom, he decided to change the name for a start, and they're no longer 5 precepts, but they're called 5 mindfulness trainings. So there is an idea that it's not about right or wrong. Nobody can practice these trainings 100%, even the Buddha. It's not possible. They are a training, they are a North Star, they are a compass, so that when we have difficult decisions in our life, should I do this or this, we can read those trainings and we will have insight as to how to decide what to do. And so Thai wrote, instead of them being just a very short line, he actually wrote like quite a long paragraph for each one, really giving a commentary on what it's all about. So for example, no killing, that becomes a recognition of the fact that we can kill just by our violent thoughts. And that one became a reverence for life. So instead of being no, it's more, let's be positive, a reverence for life. And the second one is true happiness. So that is the one about, it used to be no stealing, but Thai turned it round to say that aware of the suffering when we take things that don't belong to us. For example, when we take things from the global south, when we take things from the earth, when we are in that extractive mindset, we are stealing. So it's way wider, and so aware of that suffering. Each of the 5 trainings, it starts with aware of the suffering caused by that. That gives me the determination to go in the other direction. And then we have the third one is true love. So this was the one about no inappropriate sexual behavior. So this one is a very beautiful commentary where Thai speaks about aware of the suffering caused by that inappropriate sexual behavior, and also discrimination based on discrimination towards different gender orientation or gender, what do we call it, identity. And we are determined to respect all kinds of other people and their needs, but knowing that we need to respect people's commitments as well, and knowing that true love is made from 4 elements, which my brother will help me with because I didn't write it down. The first one is joy. The second one is, well, that's the last one. Let's go for compassion, I think. The next one is loving kindness. And the last one, equanimity, which Thai translated as inclusion, an inclusion of many worldviews. So the 4th training, rather than being no lying, he changed it to deep listening and loving speech. Can we really be present for the loved ones in our life, or really for everyone that we come into contact with? Can we offer our presence and listen, not only with our ears, but our whole body, listen to what's being said and what's not being said? And loving speech. So as I said earlier, we may well, thinking, I want to speak my truth. We have a beautiful intention, but what about the impact that's having if we are actually causing disconnection and division in the community? We have to be way more skillful. Luckily, you have the opportunity, for those of you interested, we are offering a workshop this afternoon on mindful communication, where you will learn more about the way that we train to be able to communicate skillfully. And the last of the 5 mindfulness trainings, which originally was no intoxicating substances, is way wider. It's about mindful consumption. Because Thai realized that, I was going to say if this planet is in trouble, but I think we can just take out the if. The planet is in trouble, or maybe we can even say the human species is in trouble, because in fact our planet is so resilient and has so much capacity to transform that our beautiful planet will continue and continue, but maybe the human species, if we carry on consuming in the way that we're consuming, and I know that in this room you are already doing a lot towards mindful consuming, but all those out there in the world, the collective energy going like this, and maybe those of us in the room going like this, we need to really have that waking up of the collective consciousness to know that if we continue consuming in the way that the world's population is consuming now, almost certainly the human species will collapse. And this is going to bring a lot of suffering. Therefore, we really need to train and to open our hearts, because we need to really offer our presence to the huge suffering which is ahead of us in the time to come. So those 5 mindfulness trainings, which were offered by the Buddha to lay practitioners, in fact, even as monastics, sisters, for example, we have 340 precepts that we sign up to when we ordain, but in fact they're just unpacking the 5 mindfulness trainings. That, in fact, is enough to live by for the whole of our life if we can practice those trainings. In fact, that's really what all of us are practicing. So the beautiful thing about having a common ethical code is that, well, for a start, it gives us red lines that we're not going to go beyond. And also, it gives us this compass. Thai would sometimes describe them as a safety belt. We can feel safe that when there are those difficult times, we come back to those trainings and we know this is the direction that I want to go in. And there is a very beautiful calligraphy that we have, which is when you have a path, there is no longer anything to fear. And when we commit to an ethical code, as many of you in this room know, then we know that that is the answer to despair. If we have difficulty with despair, in Plum Village, we will always invite people to follow the 5 mindfulness trainings, because we know that the moment that we are acting in an ethical way, then the first person who benefits is ourselves, and then also those around us, the community, the larger community, nations, and the whole planet also benefits from that. Okay, maybe we'll listen to the sound of the bell. So earlier I talked about these elements of happiness that the well-being researchers have found, and this is another element. Are we aligned with our ethical values? When we are aligned and we feel we are really living according to our core values, which of course are personal to each one of us, that is a great source of happiness. And if we are not aligned, that internal dissonance, that violence that we are causing ourselves, is a cause of despair. Before I met the practice, I feel so ashamed to say this, but I was a fashion designer. Can you imagine? This is why I was working in Paris. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so I was really in the hell realms. I mean, as a young person, it was such fun. For those of you who are creative, you can imagine it's fun to be a designer. It's just like being in primary school, colouring in and cutting out and sticking and creating things is very beautiful. But of course we know that behind in the industry, it's driven by desire, basically, and greed. And when I met the practice and I started to see what I was involved in, when there was that waking up of noticing the things that I didn't want to notice. When I started working, it wasn't so bad because all the production was made in France and Germany, so there were trade unions and people are paid correct wages. But towards the end of my career, we started having many agents showing up from China, from Mongolia, from India, from Morocco, with these extraordinary prices for these amazing things, absolutely beautiful things, embroidered and woven and hand-printed. I mean, you die for it. I mean, so beautiful. But I know that that piece made of crochet is going to take a week to make. And how can they sell it for that price? It's not possible. And that is ethical dissonance. I feel I've got a knot in my stomach just remembering it. And at that point, I needed to walk away. And also a similar situation for when we eat meat or fish, when we are drinking alcohol. If we really do that with mindfulness, knowing the suffering that is caused by killing animals and fish, particularly the industrial meat market, then we cannot do that. If we are really woken up to the suffering, that becomes impossible. So the next harmony is sharing insights and views. So sharing insights and views. I feel this is so compassionate of the Buddha to put, to include this. I remember once Thai invited all the people who facilitated a sangha, this is when I was still a lay friend, to come and have tea with him. And he spoke to us about how we can more skillfully lead a group, a sharing group. And I always remember one of the things he said was that our job as a facilitator is to allow the meeting or the sharing to happen. And so that means to notice who is speaking out and who is not speaking out. Who has talents but are so shy that they're never going to come forward. So our job is to notice those people and invite them into the circle, to be able to center the people who will always be on the edges for whatever reason. Maybe they're very shy. We know that sometimes our BIPOC friends are feeling very reluctant to speak out if they're in a group with a whole bunch of white people. So to just be very aware that we need to invite people into the circle. At Plum Village, we do a lot of meeting meditation. I imagine maybe in Findhorn, Ecovillage, do you have a lot of meetings? Do you enjoy your meetings? I hate meetings, I can't tell you. But the more you go up in the hierarchy in Plum Village, the more you get to go to meetings. It's very challenging. But listening to my older sisters and brothers, I'm really learning so much about how to use a meeting as a meditation. First of all, when we go to the meeting, we can notice what energy do we have as we go to the meeting. We can be so sure that this idea we have is perfect. Everyone's going to agree. It's such a great idea. And this is the idea, we're going to go for it. And everyone's going to agree to that idea. And then we say our idea, and nobody says anything. And that's when I've learned in Plum Village the beauty of this practice of letting go. Not letting go 100%, but actually part of letting go is having faith and trust that those people in the room, they have what we call in Plum Village the Sangha eye. They have the community eye. And when we have all our views coming together, we have a practice called harmonizing views. When we listen to everybody's view, and sometimes we go around to every single person, our meetings go on for hours, and we hear everybody. We don't vote for anything in Plum Village. We do everything by consensus. Can you imagine how long that takes? So after an hour and a half, we generally bring the meeting to an end, and we don't have consensus. We say, okay, we'll meet in 2 days' time. We'll come back and we'll look at it again. And then our practice is for each person to really look again at our idea and to reflect on all those views that were expressed. To think that all the people in the meeting, they come from different countries, different cultures. They have different needs. We go at different speeds. We have different imagination of, we have different aspirations. And so to have the space and the compassion to listen to all of those needs, knowing that when we can harmonize all our views, then we will go as a community. We will go as a Sangha. And I remember our abbess, she would say that the community is rather like one of those very long Pantechnicon trucks trying to get around a U-bend. So you go forward a little bit, you go back a little bit. You go forward a little bit, you go back a little bit. But you don't want to lose part of the truck, okay? We all want to go together. And I have so much compassion for my elders in the community. Like, for example, our dear abbess, Sister Gina. She came to Plum Village maybe 20, 25 years ago, completely committed to organic farming and landing in a Vietnamese community who, quite honestly, organic farming is not a priority. There are many other things that are a priority. And so it took about 15 years to get there. Can you imagine the patience, the tolerance? Is quite unbelievable. So every time I have this idea that I think, yes, this is it, but not quite ready for that yet, I think of her. I think of her patience of waiting. We got there in the end, but it took a long time, and we needed to bring everyone with us. We cannot be, we don't want to be like dictators and impose our views. So we have some more of our trainings, the 14 trainings, which are for the core community, of which everyone you see wearing a brown jacket, like Suzanne, she is part of the Order of Interbeing. They have received the 14 mindfulness trainings. They're like the Bodhisattva vows. And the very first of these trainings is called Openness, and it starts, aware of the suffering created by fanaticism and intolerance, we are determined not to be idolatrous about or bound to any doctrine, theory, or ideology, even Buddhist ones. Wow, amazing. And the second mindfulness training, I mean, there's a lot more, but I'm just reading a bit, is called non-attachment to views. Aware of the suffering created by attachment to views and wrong perceptions, we are determined to avoid being narrow-minded and bound to present views. So I'm just inviting you to think about when you've got a really strong view, you know your view is the right view. Just to remind you that that desire to be right puts us in a very lonely place. And also we may well think, but it's so rational. I've worked this out, I've seen the pros and the cons. I'm being logical and rational. This isn't emotional. Well, bad news. The neuroscientists have seen that when we are finding solutions for problems and we think we're being very, very logical, in fact, it's the emotional part of our brain which is active. So it's all about wanting to impose our views. So we must be very careful about thinking that I'm being very logical and rational. Okay, maybe we can listen to the sound of the bell. So the next one, the fifth harmony, is sharing from the heart. So I'm thinking it's a little bit to do with the one before as well. Is I remember when I was fully ordained, that means that as a fully ordained bhikshuni, in fact everything that is decided in a Buddhist community is decided by consensus of the fully ordained members. When you're a novice, you don't get to go to that meeting yet, but once you're fully ordained, you do. And when I was receiving my training, our elder sister was explaining about how we should conduct ourselves in this meeting. And I was thinking, I expect we'll probably for 2 years, we're not allowed to say anything. We just have to listen and learn and understand how it all goes. And not at all. She said, you have to commit that every time you go to the meeting and you want to share something, you have an idea, you must share it. Never leave a meeting with something on your heart that you didn't share. Because we also have a precept which says we're not allowed to complain afterwards. When you come out of the meeting, say, why? The meeting is to harmonize our views. And I was so amazed. And then she said, and if nobody gets your idea, it doesn't get accepted, then you can bring it again to another meeting. But if it didn't get accepted, it's because you weren't skillful enough. You have to look into your idea. You have to look into the energy with which you shared your idea. And skillful is such an important word. In Plum Village, we hear this a lot. It's not about right or wrong. It's about skillful. So if we come blasting in on with all our energy, and I know that I can have very strong energy, but particularly in the Sisters Hamlet, we have many, many Vietnamese sisters. And culturally, for a white European person to come in strongly, my Vietnamese sisters will be, whoa, and then they won't speak for the rest of the meeting. So that is not skillful. So we have to learn how to share our idea so that we can include everybody. And this is a practice, this is a training. So sharing from the heart, it means that in a community we need spaces where we can all share our deepest aspiration, because then we can get to know each other better, to know that what's the most important for this person and what's the most important for this person, to have that deep connection it's the most nourishing thing that we can have as human beings. Certainly in Plum Village, where we do a lot of circle sharing, it's so beautiful because our friends who come on retreat for a week, it's probably the thing that blows them away the most is in the circle sharing. And Thai would always say that it's in those circles that 80% of the transformation happens. When we put words to that difficulty or to that deepest aspiration that we've never shared with anyone, when we have a space of safety, confidence and trust, and we can speak out our truth and feel heard, as many of you know, because you practice this already, it is the most beautiful thing, and that's what creates community. So I'm coming to the last one, compassionate communication. The other day I had an experience. I was on a Zoom meeting, even when I was in Findhorn, I think, with another meeting back in Plum Village. And it was quite difficult, that meeting. And I saw that there wasn't harmony. And the meeting ended. And throughout the rest of that day, it was kind of strange. I felt that I could no longer touch the joy and the wonder of nature here in Findhorn that I had the day before and the day before. I felt there was like an invisible screen. I thought, why is this? I'm kind of taking it for granted already. And then I decided to sit and to really see what was going on. And so just sitting down, coming back to my body, noticing tension in my body, I noticed there was some feelings there, and I noticed there was sadness, and there was frustration, and I realized it was coming from that meeting. The sadness of that there wasn't the harmony that was there. And I cried a few tears to allow that to kind of overflow. And then having met those feelings, I felt that the emotion was able to flow. The energy was flowing in my body. And then I was able to really be with that difficulty and to really notice that sadness, and maybe times when I was a child, when there was frustration and sadness as well, when there was disharmony in the family. And so having really met those strong feelings in me that were being held, the whole thing started moving around, getting digested, and then I felt, wow, everything was fine. And I got up, walked on the beach, and I was really able to be present for the beauties again. And so I really noticed how much that if we don't take care of those emotions that come up in us, they act as a veil and a filter, and we can no longer be in connection with all the beautiful things around us. So, having compassion for ourselves, being able to communicate with compassion for ourselves first, to be able to take care of the anger, the frustration, the sadness in myself, like a mother with the crying baby. It means that then I can open again and be there for all the beauty, to be there for the community, to be there for everyone again. So it's very important to, particularly living in community, to be able to care for our own needs. Don't wait for the community to take care of your needs, because you might wait a very long time. Anyone recognize that? We need to take care of our own needs so that we can really be there for the community. So I've come to the end of my sharing. I just wanted to end. I've got written down here in capital letters with big circles around it, growth. All of this process, going through these, practicing with these 6 harmonies, it allows us to grow and therefore to learn. And this is one of the greatest elements of happiness, when we know that we are transforming our own suffering. Because if we don't transform, we know we're going to transmit to the next generation. We need to transform so that we can offer the best of ourselves to our community. So thank you so much for your listening. And we will listen to 3 sounds of the bell.